Planetarium, a game that demonstrates that in space no one can hear you collect sets of tokens. Will I ever get tired of the in space no one can hear you blank joke? Probably not. It's not likely. So get used to the idea if you haven't yet. In Planetarium, we create planets, no less. What an ambitious perspective for a game. No, really. There is a strong scientific, almost didactic element to this game that we see how planets are formed. The board does look a little bit busy, but you get used to it. So basically we're gonna have these tokens representing matter, and we place them randomly on the board on these dots at the beginning of the game. Then we have these tokens representing planets. They start in fixed positions as indicated by their letter there. During the game, simply the planets move around, the matter moves around, the planets reach the matter, or the matter reaches the planets. And so these blobs of matter spinning around will start forming planets. And we do that. Why? To see planets come to life, of course, and most importantly, to score points. There is a game where at the end of the game, the player with the most points wins the game. Now, the game is simplicity itself. Once you remember one important rule, everything moves clockwise. You're gonna have cards that come from 3 decks. One is called a low evolution, high evolution, and final evolution. The final evolution cards can only be played during your last turn, so they're just final scoring, but you will want to build up to them because there's some really powerful scoring that can happen there. There definitely can be a reversal of fortune. Somebody who's behind scores a bunch of these cards at the end, and they end up on top, and that's awesome. These cards, they all have some point value. These are victory points that you score when you play the card. Some may also have other advantages. For example, this one allows you to collect any one matter token from the board. And here on this side, you have the requirements. So, for example, to play this card and achieve its point value and get the benefit, I need to discard these 2 tokens. As simple as that. I need to discard them from a planet on my personal display. Each player has a display where you will collect the tokens. So if, for example, planet C collects that token, then I place it here on my display. If planet A collects that token, then I place it here. As you can see from these symbols here, each player is building 2 rock planets and 2 gas giants, because some cards that you saw earlier may have a requirement there. So, for example, to play this card, I need to discard this token. I need to discard this token from a rock planet, and it just so happens that I have it. So, when you can meet those requirements, you discard the corresponding tokens and you play the card, you score victory points, possibly collect our values, and then you play the card next to the edge of the board corresponding to that planet, which in this case is planet A. So I would play that card right there face up, like so. I also place a token of my own color as a reminder that I own that card. That will be important for scoring purposes later. And that's the way it is. Suppose that later somebody else also plays a card using resources from their A section, then they're also contributing to planet A, and they also play the card there, and suppose that was a green player. And then maybe somebody else does that by discarding tokens from the B section of their player aid, and then they are contributing to planet B. And so that's why you're going to have lines of cards that are going to form during the game next to the board, like so. And that's for playing cards. But again, remember, we gotta, before we do that, we gotta collect those tokens. Now, when it is your turn, you need to move your tokens. Meaning you can choose to move a matter token to a dot next to it, and usually that's the movement. They just move by one dot. It needs to be empty. If by moving a token by one dot it touches a planet, it goes on the corresponding section of your planet display, as we've seen. You can also, instead of moving a matter trying to reach a planet, you can move a planet. Same idea. If it reaches a token, it goes on the corresponding section of your display. Planets, however, they can move more than one spot. They don't have to move just one dot. Also, as you can see, there's these main lines, but for game purposes, you can use these other lighter lines just as well. So, for example, it would be a legal movement for me to move that token there, and or to move this planet, suppose the planet is there right now, to move it following that light line there, that way. And after a while, when there are fewer tokens on the board, again, the planets can move multiple spaces. These planets can go quite a way, and everything goes clockwise. So the general idea is super simple. Move a token or move a planet with the purpose, again, of having planets and tokens meet, so that you will collect your tokens in space where no one can hear you doing so. And again, if you meet the requirements of a card, you can play it. And again, you place it next to the board on the side corresponding to that planet, marking that you own that card, that you were the one to play. After you play a card, you get to draw cards. Again, remember there are 3 decks of cards. We got the low evolution, high evolution, and final evolution. When you draw the final, you always draw 2 and keep 1. When you draw low and high, you just draw 1. So you will always have a hand of 5 cards. But later in the game, the composition may change, especially later in the game, you will want to have more final evolutions, because again, that will allow you to score points. Another thing that is checked for game effects is whether a planet is hostile or habitable. If when you play cards to a planet, suppose, we already have planet B here. When you play cards to a planet, you check the numbers indicated here, or the border, I should say, the edge around the score value. If there are more points surrounded by gray, it means that the planet is hostile to life. If there are more points framed by green, it means that the planet is habitable. So right now, 10 awaits 3, and so the planet has become habitable. If there's a tie, the token hostile habitable stays on the side where it is. That's why at the beginning of the game, all planets are hostile. When we played that one, it stayed hostile because we got 3 for hostile. Now we got 7 for habitable. And that, of course, may flip either way. Remember also that to play cards with discard tokens, you're wondering, where do I discard them exactly? That's an important existential dilemma. I know it is, right? So when we discard tokens to play cards, we're going to place them along this track here that runs around the play area. That also represents the timer for the game. Later on, a token will be placed here on this space, and so from that moment on, matter tokens can move by 2 spots. And that's important because at this point, as you can see, there will be way fewer tokens on the board, and so these poor little matter tokens that could need to travel more to reach their beloved planets. The game continues until you're gonna have somebody place a matter token there, discarded to play a card. That triggers the end of the game. The player that places their token, pretty much that by doing so, it means that they started the last turn. So after they take their other actions as normal, they finally get to play final evolution cards, and you simply have to meet those requirements. For example, to demonstrate that a planet where you have control, remember those tokens, that's very important. In this case, for example, a planet that you have control is a rocky planet, is in the bands between 1 and 3, and again, you need to have control of it, and that icon indicates that to play the card, you remove that token. So basically you cannot use a card that you played to fulfill the requirement of multiple final evolution cards. So that's the idea. That's how you play final evolution cards. So you play again until somebody places a token there, and that triggers the last turn for everybody. So from that moment on, everybody gets to take their action as normal, play cards as normal. The difference is that you also get to play final evolution cards, again also removing a token every time that you do so. At that point, you total together the victory points that people scored during the game, plus the ones from the final evolution cards. Player with the highest total wins the game. Planetarium is really nice. I think it is a super simple game, but with a couple of really fun, really interesting elements. The art to me is phenomenal. I really like the sense of awe and wonder that this art creates. I can almost hear the Star Trek theme there when I look at these images of those planets. I can almost imagine the Voyager with little Janeway in it, starting the phenomenon. So very nice, no complaints there about the art. When it comes to gameplay, again, simplicity is the key here, because you are moving a token toward another token and you collect those tokens. But the kind of decisions that go into that are made very interesting by the balance you need to keep between short-term objectives and long-term objectives. It's always fun to collect 3 points now. But really, if by doing so, and then I collect 3 more and 3 more, but by doing so you're ignoring building up to scoring a 13-point card at the end of the game, or 2 of those, then of course you're not gonna win. And so I really like how things change because of that, how I'm trying to prepare for this card here that will require certain hostile planet within that band, so I need to make sure that players are playing cards that as they flip hostile habitable planet token, they don't go where I don't want them to go. So there are a lot of interesting little factors there that you take into account, you should take into account as you're trying to balancing your short-term objectives and the changing situation on the board with the long-term objectives. And sometimes it is about building up to that opportunity. Some other times it's seeing the window of opportunity because other people have played certain game effects, and now the planet, it looks like it's gonna be easy to get that planet in that band, so I can do things differently. Because remember, your final scoring cards, they're specific, but they don't say the letter of a planet. So okay, I want a planet A to be hostile in that band. That's not gonna happen, but with these 2 moves I can get planet B to fulfill the conditions of this card. But then it means I need to have a card on the side of the board, planet B. Okay, let me look for a cheap card that I can place there. So for a game this simple, I think it has some really nice elements there, some interesting layers there. The number of tokens, that means the number of points that are available, that means the number of actions that are available, is fixed. That means that the game will change quite a bit based on number of players. There is no mitigating factors there. Meaning, if you're playing with 4 people, you're only taking 25% of the actions in the game, and you need to make sure that the players are not analysis paralysis kind of players, because that is definitely going to ruin the game. That also means that you will see the token track fill up quickly. That means you need to start switching from low evolution cards into collecting final evolution cards early on. So the switching strategy happens earlier. Now, I did play with 4 players and I didn't have any problem. It just happens my friends were able to keep the game moving, but I see how in some groups, with some players, that may be a problem. And also some people may feel that the game is rushed that way. Don't play with 4 players then. Again, I enjoyed even the challenge of basically having to see opportunities for final scoring more than having half of the game just to build them up. With fewer players, then you're going to have more agency, more control, higher scores, And because of that, actually, probably final evolution cards are going to be less important because you have more time to score lower cards during the game. So the flow and the pace of the game will change depending on the number of players. The experience will change, and then you can find what is your Goldilocks number of players, maybe 3. But so I don't see that as a negative, but I want to point it out as a warning because some numbers of players may work better in some groups rather than others. But to me, I really like games where you get to choose what you score, where you get to build your scoring opportunities, as opposed to we're always trying to go for the same thing. And I think Planetarium does that pretty well, especially when you compare to the incredibly simple core engine, which is pick up a token, move a planet or move a token with the purpose of collecting a token. Again, there may be situations where your strategy is pretty set, so you know what you're going to do for the next 3 rounds because you want those 3 tokens, and that's it. And again, in that case, again, you need to make sure that your group keeps it moving. I didn't find that to be a problem again because ultimately I was like, oh, I'm going to be on autopilot for the next three turns. With the exception that, of course, I was pretty worried that somebody may take those tokens and then force me to change strategy. But the fact that sometimes you know exactly what you're gonna do, I didn't find it to be a problem when the games move so fast mechanically. Again, make sure that the players live up to that expectation and they don't treat this as a sort of like super cerebral puzzle. That would definitely kill the fun. In general, with the right group that is willing to keep the game moving, doesn't bog it down with analysis paralysis, I find Planetarium to be a satisfying, really good looking, fun set collection game.